You're listening to Dirty Feet, a dance podcast. I'm Allison Elizabeth Burns. To get us started, I would ask you to please introduce yourself and give us some context for who you are as it pertains to the Ottawa dance scene.
My name is Yvonne Coutts, and I'm a choreographer in Ottawa. I moved here back in the 1980s, the late 1980s, to go to summer school with Le Groupe Dance Lab, which was Le Groupe de la Place Royale at the beginning. I was a dancer in Ottawa for over 10 years and a choreographer independently the entire time, parallel to that. Always thought of myself as a choreographer first, and in the past 10 years have been the artistic director of Ottawa Dance Directive.
So I'm Sylvie Desrosiers, and I'm director of the contemporary dance program at the School of Dance. And I guess I'm also president of Ottawa Dance Directive, chair of the board.
And artistic director of Dorsal Dance.
Yeah, and also artistic director of Dorsal Dance, exactly. Dorsal Dance tries to foster a little bit the development of dancers that kind of started their career here in Ottawa.
So my name is Frédérique Pelletier, and I'm from Montreal. I choose the School of Dance, the School of Dance in Ottawa to study there, contemporary dance. And so I joined the school to train and perform, and I just love there, and I wanted to move from Montreal and choose a school far away and just learn some new stuff. And then I joined the School of Dance for 3 years, and I just graduated this summer. And so now I'm a professional dancer in contemporary dance.
My name is Elizabeth Emond-Stevenson. My pronouns are she, her, and elle. And I'm an Ottawa-based dance artist and choreographer who was born here and studied here, studied elsewhere as well, and came back to continue working. Within the Ottawa community, I am a dance educator, coordinator, guest artist, and rehearsal assistant with Propeller Dance, which is an integrated dance company here in Ottawa. And during non-COVID times, I usually dance also for a company out of Shankman Centre called Terralus Danse, a Franco-Ontarian young audience company, and I create my own work under the name Take Up Space.
Great. I'm actually going to take a step backwards now and just ask you to describe all the activities that encompass the Ottawa Dance Directive, and that you have a space, that you have a performance company, that you have guest choreographers, and that you also present work of other choreographers. And in the Series Danse 10, or as you referred to.
Yes, so part of Ottawa Dance Directive's mandate is that we have 4 streams of programming. One is a resident company, and we call that company ODD. The second, or parallel to that, is a presentation series, professional presentation series, Series Dance 10, SD10. And that series presents artists from all over Canada and international artists in co-presentation with the National Arts Centre. And then we have residencies, so hosting residencies for local artists, for provincial, national, international, and then resource sharing. So making the studios available and accessible to as many artists and people, recreational groups as we can.
Yeah, and to give some context for anyone outside of the Ottawa dance industry, at least in contemporary dance, this diversity of activities that the Ottawa Dance Directive puts on and serves really, really bolsters the community here and the industry here.
Yes, well, and trying, it might be important to say that, over the time that those spaces have been for dance in Ottawa, so early in the Arts Court years, the dance center that was there was Le Groupe Dance Lab, and that was one of the anchor organizations for this hub of arts in Ottawa. But at that time, the spaces were quite reserved for the company. And the company had a lot of activity, a lot of shows, like every 3 weeks there were shows, it was ongoing. So when Odd took over those spaces, we wanted to try and open the space so that more people had access and could share in those resources.
So we're going back to January 2020, and I'd like to just do this exercise of imagining the 2020 that you had planned with your programming for the Ottawa Dance Directive and your creative phases and all of that. Can you kind of describe what you had in store for 2020 at that stage?
Well, back in January 2020, we were preparing for the fall of 2020, which would have been Odd's 10th anniversary. So we're in Odd's 10th anniversary season right now. And we were in creation phase for several choreographers so that we could premiere those works as part of the celebration year. So coming in the spring of that year, I just finished my second creation phase on the last day when the lockdown happened, March 13th. And then we had Ted Robinson coming in to do a phase 2. And we had Jocelyn Todd coming back in to do a phase 2. Hers was going into production in the spring. And we had one more SD10 as well. So it was a big creation time in the spring. And then moving into the summer and to the fall would have been the premiere of this, which we were hoping was a big show, a mixed program for Ted and I to kick off the 10th anniversary. And then a series of events this whole year that was really highlighting the 10th anniversary year.
With Dorsal Dance, what happened is the previous year we had just premiered a piece with 5 dancers. So last year I was kind of getting ready to talk to some presenters and see if there was presenting possibilities for that piece. 2020, in the case of the program, was the year where we do the 50 Dancer Project, which is a project we do with the graduates of the School of Toronto Dance Theatre and the graduates of the Winnipeg Contemporary Dancer School and l'École de Danse Contemporaine of Montreal and l'École de Danse de Québec. So usually our graduates are brought together in a show that was actually supposed to happen in Toronto in June, where all the dancers were working with Marc Boivin on a piece that would be presented at that time. That was a big part of what we were working on, especially with the graduating class. And then for sure, there was guest choreographers still coming. There was, a show in May with the works of all the guest choreographer of the season.
I want to start back in January of 2020. So this is the end now of your third year. Can you tell me a bit about what your life looks like as a near graduate student of the school, studying, making plans for the future? What were you expecting for 2020?
Oh my God, that's a good question. I think me and my friends there, we just thought about workshops, maybe train in LA, go like out there, make some new contacts and stuff. But we didn't expect the world to be in the pandemic into 2020. So it was super I wanted to be ready when I was graduating to just go out there and meet new people and put my name on the map. So I wanted to travel a bit and work with choreographers from Ottawa. I had some project there too. But I didn't have a specific plan. I just knew that I wanted to go in different countries and stuff. So to learn new material, new people, new choreographer to put my name on the map, because it's dance. It's a small world. So when you go out there and you meet new people, like your circle just grow a bit more, and you know more people and you have more opportunities. Sorry, yeah. So that was my plan.
Going back to January, I was working all over the city, taking public transport everywhere for teaching and rehearsals and training. And in January, I was preparing for a GTA school tour with Terre Dance. So I was in Orleans 2 to 3 times a week for full days working on that. It was a piece called Les Bâtons by Annick Bouvrette. I was also getting ready to support Propeller on their tour to Toronto, which took place in March. So we were rehearsing out of GCTC, which is in Westboro. So I was in that area a lot. I was teaching in Vanier, in Pinecrest, in the Glebe, kind of all over the place. I was training with the School of Dance in the mornings in their professional program, taking that class. And sort of any other pop-up gigs or projects that I had were definitely not taking place in my home. They were taking place outside of my home in the city. It was a bit mayhem, actually, like January, February for me. Not a lot of time off, but yeah, I'd say lots of displacing from here to there, getting from different activities each day. Lots of time in the studio at that point.
I want you now to take me to March 2020, because of course we all have our experience of discovering the pandemic and learning about it and starting to try and understand what it means for us. And you had quite a unique experience in March. As things were kind of falling apart, do you want to describe to us where you were and what was going on?
Sure. The last week of February and the first week of March, I was in and out of the GTA with Terre Dance. And I remember seeing, like, in the hotels we stayed at, seeing on the TV screens, oh, there's like a case in Toronto, there's another case in Toronto. And none of us were panicking at that point. We were just like, thank goodness we don't live in Toronto. And we kept doing our tours. At that point, we were more worried about the school strikes because we were doing school tours. So we were very worried about that. And we were looking at the news and getting updates every day about that issue as it stood. And then the second week of March was when I headed to Toronto with Propeller. And at the very beginning, there was this is like the week leading up to March 15th. And there was some worry when we were heading there, but it wasn't extreme worry. And then everything escalated day by day while we were there. Toronto was obviously farther along than we were. So I was going to grocery stores or walking on the street, and it was just like a ghost town. The grocery stores were out of everything. There were huge lineups. Like, it was sort of a prelude to what would happen in like 2 more days in Ottawa, I guess you could say. The city was shutting down. We weren't even sure if we were going to perform. We were one of the last shows performing because we performed up to March 14th, actually. The Saturday was our last performance, and it was held. We reduced the audience capacity, and we were already in a big group, and they hadn't recommended masks yet, so we didn't have any like social distancing in place because it wasn't at that point yet, even though we could see something very scary was happening. So while this was happening, while we were finishing this tour, I was getting emails from my other contracts saying, we're taking a break. Most of those came in like Thursday, Friday. And then I got home on the 15th, the day that everything officially sort of started to shut down, I guess you could say. Like, I took the Via Rail train home, and then bam, it was like, it's here, the pandemic is here. And that was the last time I ended up performing on stage because someone got injured. So that was the last time I was on a stage, was March 14th. And that was the last time I've done any significant in-person work.
Can you tell me what you expected from the rest of the year at that point, at that stage?
I was under the impression that we would perhaps be back by the fall. Well, that's not true. Right at the beginning, I was like, 2 weeks, we can do that. And I had no idea like anyone else, but I was always moving my date farther and farther away. So I think once I had somewhat of a picture, I was like, maybe summer. And then I was like, definitely fall. And then since the fall, I just stopped making predictions for myself. Yeah, it's sort of funny because different people updated me, like different places I work. Some were like very big on updating. We think we're going to come back now. Others just kind of kept their space while they figured things out. So it's sort of, we were all guessing, I guess, myself included.
In March. So I know that at some point we couldn't go to the school. So I just moved to my parents just for, I think it was 2 weeks that the school just like closed for the COVID. And I wasn't expected that I didn't had the chance to come back to the school since those 2 weeks. So I just left the school and I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going home for 2 weeks, just a little break. And then boom, pandemic. So I was like, oh my God, I didn't have the chance to go at the school since then. So it was pretty weird to just leave the school like that and never come back. So yeah.
Yeah, and this is the kind of school where you're there every day. Like you're there Monday to Friday. Mm-hmm. You're spending massive amounts of time there in classes, learning and training and doing creative process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Monday to Friday, you're there and you give your 100% on the dance floor.
Did you have like a locker full of clothes that got left behind?
Yeah, maybe some stuff is still there, but it wasn't that important, so it's okay.
And so then what happened to training at home? Like, how did that work for you?
At first I was going to the gym, so I was really ready to just keep my shape and stuff. But then the gyms just started to close, and now I just work from home. So I'm training in my parents' basement. So yeah, I'm lucky because I have a lot of space here. So I'm super lucky for that. Some people don't have many spaces or a lot of space to practice or just dance on their own and stuff, or just train. So yeah, for that I was very lucky. I just train with some online classes with the school. Like when the pandemic just arrived, we just adapt with online classes on Zooms. And I just graduated from the Zoom.
So we left for March break thinking we would come back. And then as March break started, then we got the news that we had to go and shut down. So I guess at first it was, well, in 2 weeks, it's going to be okay. We'll be able to come back. And then so at the program, we decided to maybe just take a break and decided to finish the year a little bit later. But then eventually that plan didn't work out because then, we had to come back to learn something and finish the year. So that's when, after 3 weeks, then I decided I was redesigning the whole end of year. And everything was done online till the end of June. So by that time, the year had to expand.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I was in rehearsal. So I'm the choreographer for the resident company. And we were finishing our 2 weeks second phase. And we could feel the news was coming over the whole 2 weeks that, something was going to happen. And sure enough, on the final day of rehearsal, basically we finished the final run, videoed the final run, and then everybody was scooping up their belongings. And we thought, okay, we're going home for 2 weeks, grab all our stuff and just get the heck out of here and go home, stay safe, everybody, but we wrapped up. But I really feel like all of us thought this is a short term, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. So that's what we prepared for initially. And then, of course, everybody knows what happened. And because we are in a larger arts facility, Arts Court as a city run center had definite restrictions about access. And, we just started to pivot that's the word, I guess, right now, right? The pivot word, which is nice for dance because pivot is a nice movement. We started to, I guess there's a hierarchy of things that happened. First of all, the artists that we were in contract with, we needed to make sure that they were compensated for lost wages and time. So we made sure that all of that happened right away, that people knew that if they had been, even verbally contracted with us, that we were committed to them, their event would be postponed or rescheduled, but it would not be canceled. And that we would compensate them for a portion of their fees, whether it was a written contract or not. So that was number one on our list, to make sure that artists were aware that we're there. We're not abandoning you, in this time. And then after that, it went into the rescheduling. And, we all kind of laugh in all of the different organizations about, okay, now which revision is this? Because there's so many revisions that have happened. Basically whatever events were happening in the spring, we started to defer them to the fall. And then of course you have to talk to all the different artists who were involved, and it was a constant rescheduling of things that happened. And then it went into, okay, so now what can we do to create an opportunity in the moment though? And create work and continue creating with people. So we moved into a virtual process for 3 weeks in June. We did a Zoom collaboration with all of the people that had been contracted for the spring. We brought them all back together to do a 3-week process called Take My Hand that we premiered on YouTube. And that was fun and exciting to see everyone in all these different parts of the world, being very resilient. And I think coming together like that was a great, we all just felt like we needed that connection. And, and then just, we kept moving forward with looking at how can we program for the future, keeping things in place that were supposed to be in place, adding to them the postponed things, while also creating events that were in the current time, and then managing the budget with that. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now is with everything, there's only so much budget. So if we create a whole bunch of programming in the present moment to do something online, then we're left with, we won't have enough for the extra that we're going to need in the next 2 years for all of that postponed programming. So it was all the management of those different elements, which must be similar in many sectors.
So can you describe a bit the pre-redesign and the post-redesign? Like, what was the kind of like immediate measures in place to adapt the program? And then what were the kind of more thoughtful long-term measures put in place?
First of all, one of the things that happened is because we had guests that are not from Ottawa, we had to reorganize the guest And some of them were not ready to start creating online because that's not what the contract was. That's not what the experience was supposed to be. So, I ended up working with more emerging choreographers to finish the year because they were already a little bit more in tune with trying to work virtually or with more new technologies, you know? So we ended up changing the programming so that the choreographers could work with the student online, and eventually they decided to create, two of them created dance films, and one of them created a Zoom event. And then with Marc Boivin also, at first we let the whole thing go, thinking the project with the 50 dancers won't happen. And eventually, with thinking about it, Marc came back to us, the directors of the program, and said, we have to at least do one event. So we ended up doing a Zoom event with all the graduates, with the 50 dancers. And that was quite exciting. And let's say it brought in a whole new way of visualizing dance, I guess, because in the 50 Dancer project, eventually what Marc did was they had timers and they would do things at the same time that we wouldn't even see. So he would say at 3:30, you all leave your room. You'll all go outside. You will take a photograph of the house. Then you will go in the street. You will do this version of the movement. Then you will. So we knew the piece, but we weren't seeing it. So that was very interesting. And then by the end, they came back in the Zoom meeting and then they performed another part of the piece and everything. So it was a quite surreal as an experience.
We had some technical classes on Zoom the morning. We had like the same schedule that we could have if we were at the school. So we just wake up in the morning, open the computer, start the Zoom class, technical class first, and then after we had some maybe Pilates or maybe some yoga and stuff. And then after it was like a 4 hours block to work on a project with like the final project with a choreographer. It was Kekani that worked with us for our last choreography, if I say. So we just created a virtual Zoom dance. So we were just online and we create like a piece on our computer. So it was like a pattern walking stuff and dancing there in the basement and dancing outside and it was online and everybody could watch. So it looked like a final product that we made. So it was kind of nice to finish on a good note with a good project like that. So it was fun. It was fun.
Good. Yeah. I just want to point out when you say technical, you're talking about technique. You're talking about a dance class. Mm-hmm. I think that might be misinterpreted as like a Zoom class, but it's not at all that. It's you're taking dance class through the computer. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're learning the technique of dance. Yeah. But about this final project, so not only are you working, you're working as an interpreter or as a dancer for this choreographer, and you're working collaboratively with them, but then you're also having to think about the eye of the camera and how that fits with all the other squares on the screen and all that. So this is a bit of a, like, could I say there's a learning curve there for the group in terms of like switching gears from just learning one skill to learning several?
It was challenging. It was like you have to work with a computer just far away. You don't have the physical touch to work with someone else, to dance with someone else. You just have some advice through the computer, and you just have to apply it on your body. So if in dance classes we had some advice to maybe do certain moves, we just have to figure out on your own, because you're alone at your house and you don't have like the teacher with you to help you. So it was kind of challenging, but we managed to figure it out and to succeed. Yeah.
So at some point during this time you're describing, you come up with different conclusions as the year progressed. At what point did you start adapting your practice and how you are operating in your career?
Very early on, I did take the first week of the pandemic, I think, to just sleep, mostly sleep and be quiet, because it had such a whirlwind couple months before that. And obviously the pandemic was terrifying and trying to sort of cope like everyone else. I started training in my home probably the second week of the pandemic, because there was this huge onslaught of dance companies and individuals offering classes and training for free. At that point, I was in a smaller space than I'm in now. So it was more challenging, but I was definitely training regularly. And I was watching a ton of dance performance, because again, there was so much free content at that point. And maybe a couple weeks or a few weeks into the pandemic, organizations started putting out calls for virtual opportunities. So I started applying for some virtual ways to continue sharing my work and kind of giving myself goals, I guess, to work towards to keep my practice going. And a part of what enabled me to do that was the CERB, because I was in a full panic at the beginning as an independent contractor, all my work canceled, no health insurance, no benefits, no EI. I was really not sure what I was going to do. But then CERB, for the brief period that I got it, allowed me to continue training at home and pursuing the opportunities that did present themselves.
Right. Yeah, that's the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. And that was vital, I think, to a lot of artists who are largely contract workers and entrepreneurs. Can you describe a little bit better the virtual opportunities that arose and how organizations were offering artists like you opportunities to continue to train and present work and create work online?
Sure, yeah. Probably the first virtual opportunity that I took part in was the NAC's Canada Performs. They put out a call to all sorts of different performing artists to share, I think it was about an hour's worth or more of work that would be live streamed. So I created a solo performance on myself, which I was going to say obviously, but on myself, set to the album Sketches of Spain by Miles Davis. And that was, my first experience doing that. I don't normally make a lot of work on myself anymore because I find it really difficult, but circumstances are circumstances. So that was really an amazing opportunity.
That was also like being presented by the National Art Center is not an easy gig. So this was creating also accessibility for artists who wouldn't necessarily have that avenue otherwise. Hey.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a boon. It was like, wow, this is something special. This is something stressful, but very, very special. And it kind of created, there was lots of the sense for me of wanting to not only stay in touch with the communities I was already a part of, but engage with other communities. And I kind of felt that with the Canada Performs because I watched a lot of the other artists and I kind of got to see what was going on through Canada in that way.
Silver linings to the pandemic situation, forcing everything online. We might be remiss, though, to skip some of the downfalls of it as well. You did say you've upgraded your space so that you have a little more room to move now that you're moving mostly from home. But tell us a bit about what that's like, teaching from home, rehearsing from home, doing your entire creative practice, especially in the winter time within the walls of your apartment.
It's it's become the new normal, obviously, because it is what it is, and it's the only way to practice right now for me and for many others. The teaching took a bit to adapt to, and I'm still learning. But I find the teaching online less challenging or more adaptable than, say, when I'm training online. I feel the lack of space and I feel the lack of connection maybe more than I do in teaching. I'm not sure why. I just feel it every day. I miss being in the studio so much. I miss the connection with the people. I think that people offering training and courses on a regular basis are doing a good job of adapting to people's spaces so that you're not feeling that big void as much as you would if they weren't adapting it for your space.
To just paint a picture, like a dance class will often involve a lot of locomotion or moving across the floor, encouraging the participants to actually eat the space, take it up, be bigger, which can cause a problem if you have limited floor space to work with. Yes.
I have changed, like the way my apartment is set up it's set up for dance. Like I have a big empty space in the middle of my living room specifically so I can move as much as I can. And I have a bar, Allison can see this, but I have a bar and like a foam roller and things set up on the side. I think if I some days I want to go extreme and get rid of my couch and get rid of my kitchen table and just have the entire space. But then I'm like, oh, that's a little too far.
So with this variety of options, let's say, between film and video conference performance and streaming, and there are logistical considerations that make you choose to postpone or adapt one project or another, but there's also artistic considerations. How do you decide which strings to pull on and which ones to hold off on?
Well, for Take My Hand, that was just a brand new idea, and wanting to bring those artists together, who just a wonderful group of people, and then just this being involved in the glitchy Zoom world at the beginning, having not known, and discovering these weird things that were going on with the background, depending where you place the X, and it was really fun for me because it was a completely new format. I had no expectations of anything, so I kind of felt like I was back to being that 20-year-old choreographer, just no expectations, and that was a brand new experience. On the other hand, what we did was we always went to the artist first and asked them what they would like to do. In most cases, if the work was in a creation phase and supposed to go right into production, and that's what was being postponed, many people wanted to postpone and keep it to be a live performance. But we always gave the option to the artist. And we tried to say that fairly early on. Would you like to try something else? Would you like to make this into a film or try a different online format? And then we try to roll with what their preference was.
So what I'm also hearing about the adaptations is that they're constantly changing and you're constantly revising and you're constantly shifting. I'm curious though if there was a moment between, let's say, March and December where it became more evident how long term this issue was going to be and where there was any major overhaul adaptation done by the Ottawa Dance Directive.
Yes, I would say that, I'm trying to remember what our deadline date was. We would set these dates that would be, by that time, if this isn't happening, we need to make another round of change. And I remember at, I just wish I could remember what date that was, when you could feel several organizations, like we have tenants meetings at Arts Court, for example, and you could get the feeling like, okay, no, there is no programming going to happen in the fall. The moment that happened, that was a huge shift. And then everything from that time really got deferred almost an entire year away. And up until that point, I'd say up until about the summer, just before the summer, maybe May, there was still that hope. Oh, maybe we'll be able to do something, And then, I don't know, there was just like, you could feel it. No, there's not, and we can't take the chance, and we have to keep everybody safe. And then a really big change into shifting everything into the next season altogether happened. I'll just give you a small example of, in September of 2020, we were going to do this premiere, but we also had this new initiative called Open Source Studio that was for 10 emerging artists with Jocelyn Todd as a choreographer, and there was going to be a mentor. And so we augmented that. Jocelyn was still able to choreograph. We still had 10 emerging artists, but it was virtual, the creation time. And then we were going to go into, okay, well, we'll do the final process into a film again. And the filming was to take place outside. The week before we were supposed to meet in Ottawa to do the filming with all these emerging artists, Quebec went into lockdown. Several of the people lived on the Quebec side. So then there was the discussion, we can't safely bring them out of a red zone into our zone and feel that that's, okay. So then we shifted again. Okay, Jocelyn will work with one person that's here in Ottawa that she's the closest in the bubble to, and she'll create a film on her. Okay, so now instead of that, we booked the Mayfair Theatre, and we're going to present the film at the Mayfair with these two other films. We had a Laura Toller film, and we were going to show Take My Hand again. And we just nicely sent all of the communication stuff to the Mayfair, and that afternoon at 1:00, they announced the Ottawa lockdown. So, and the Mayfair was booked during that 28 days. So all of that, again, went to, back into the little sack of items that are available for... And, of course, there's all the footage is there. She still went ahead and, created footage, and Jocelyn is working on this film that we will put up at some point. But, yeah, it's just another piece of the puzzle.
So in among these adaptations and these things that you were letting go of, you're also... adding more work for yourself, but adding programming too, and things to support the community. There were these micro residencies that happened in studio that Elizabeth took advantage of. You have a virtual residency coming up. Can you speak a bit to these adaptations, these additional tools that you're providing the community?
Sure. I think one of the things that we really tried to put in place quickly was when there was some of the restrictions lifted and Arts Court opened, not to the general public, but we could open our studios to, with very strict guidelines. We had that ready to go. And what we decided was, like I said before, with resource sharing, we have evening renters and weekend renters from the recreational community. And then we have our, generally speaking, the professional community is there more in the daytime and then for performances. So we tried to make it that we got those studio spaces open as quickly as we could to artists that could be in residence and in creation. And I can't remember what the capacity was. It was a small capacity, and then we made those spaces available free of charge so that all the space was donated to all the artists, because the financial situation right now for performing artists in contemporary dance in a region is devastating. So that was one of the things we tried to do, was really make that happen as quickly as we could for as many people as we could. And then we partnered with Elizabeth for the classes online and outside. So that was a great way to bring community people together. And we had this incredible lineup of community teachers, which was really fun. And I think a lot of people enjoyed this variety of, just an opportunity to experience all these different ways of practice.
Yeah, and like before there was snow on the ground, you set up a speaker out in Lansdowne and the crew would dance outside. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was great. We found a nice spot, and we did it a little bit guerrilla style, so that just went there and took over the little space. And but no, and I think it worked, and it created that kind of connection that people were so missing, Somewhere along the line, I couldn't help but ask myself a little bit, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What are we doing it? Why are we doing it? And what is this asking from us this time? And that kind of became the departure point for the virtual residency that's starting on Monday. Because I felt this, now that's more of a personal thing, is I felt this constant kind of urgency to get things done and to be visible and make sure that it doesn't disappear, and all of this pressure kind of in the virtual world, and which of course is important, but as an artist I realized I needed to start cultivating my attention and my concentration and slowing down, and that I'm prepared that when we get back to creation again, I know what my intentions are, and that they're meaningful and purposeful, and that I've learned something from this time, and that it's informed my practice, and it will hopefully inform others in their practice. So that was for me, that was a wonderful turning point in terms of when we talk about the silver lining and, so much grief and sorrow in the world, and trying to make shape of that and have it be substance for the next level of expression, perhaps, and how we respond to that. And I don't know, something just kind of dropped a little bit in how I felt I wanted to move forward with programming.
So something that happened that was really special for me, even just watching, was for a brief time there was the possibility of working in studio, and you took advantage of that to do a short residency at the Ottawa Dance Directive, and you live streamed the outcome. And this was a piece that you'd you'd begun virtually exclusively with all of the performers in their own space, and this was the second iteration in studio together. I found it very touching to see people sharing space in a dance studio. Tell me what it was like on the inside.
It also resonated for me a lot to be able to be in spatial communion, I guess you could call it, with others. I was actually very, I was very scared to go into the studio, not because of the safety measures. The safety measures were very clear and very well put into place. It was more that creating online was new for me, and there were challenges, but it wasn't the same as going from being able to do whatever I want in a studio to going into a studio with all these parameters set in terms of the relationships I could create in dance. So that was intimidating. The first maybe rehearsal or two, I was kind of feeling very stuck.
So just to be clear, we're talking about like staying 6 feet apart, not doing floor work, not touching each other, those kind of parameters?
Yes, yeah. And staying, once you were in, so the studio was segregated into boxes, and each person chose a box and they had to stay in that box the entire time. So we couldn't play even with any kind of like very far shifting in space. And also with the boxes set up the way we were, we had to maintain a box between each box, which was good, which was important, but just like, it made me consider things that I kind of take for granted normally. Yeah. Or just, I asked people to do things. I used to ask people to do things without reflecting. I'd just be like, oh, okay, like just go over there, go into the corner of the studio and come back. Oh, you can't do that anymore. You can't go somewhere and come back. You can't, just, embrace each other using your legs, or like you can't, so many things are off the table that just seemed like you didn't realize how limitless the choices were until, we were so fortunate to be in a studio, so it's not like it was a hardship, but, it ended up working out really well. I'm very happy with the work we made together. I think it was good work. I'm proud of what we did, and the block eventually lifted, and I could just kind of dive into the work and the connections with these spectacular artists, and that ended up feeling really rewarding for the team, I think.
Okay, I want to circle back now to that idea you just threw out there that this fall has been less exciting. Is that the right language for this online?
Yes. Well, the fall was because we were allowed to go back in the studio in the fall. We just had to respect dancing in a 6-foot square and dancing with mask. But we managed to have our classes happening, and we had some guest choreographers. Again, I had to go with local guest choreographers because we weren't supposed, or it wasn't suggested to go from regions to region. So I had Jane Mappin and Yvonne Coutts and Alia and Calder White, who was in Ottawa the whole fall. So they worked with the student, but all the choreographies are done in squares. So that was interesting, but everybody managed to do something very unique anyway, So I think the students were very happy to be back in the studio, but then they, you get tired a little bit of the whole protocol of the mask and everything, but I have nothing but good things to say about the students and how they handled all of this. Like from the spring with the graduating class that had no graduating, I never saw them live since last March. And it's my, the graduating class. It's so surreal, So
you're proud of these students and you're letting them out into the world without this formal ceremony. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I can't wait for us to be able to actually have a meal together or something to celebrate their graduation. But the way they handle that and how positive everybody was, and the same with the whole fall, everybody was very, very positive. But since Christmas, now we're back online, and there's a little bit less, it's hard. It's just harder for everybody. Everybody is trying to be super positive, but it's still a little bit harder, they feel the loneliness a little bit more this time.
Yeah, I think that's not unique to them.
Exactly.
I wanted to talk about the specific challenge of training younger or like the pre-professional students, because if you're a dancer who has quite a bit of experience and you're training at home by yourself with a Zoom class or with a YouTube class or something like that, that's one thing. If you already know, if you can correct yourself, if you can understand your body in a certain way. As a younger dancer, as a newer dancer, obviously that's going to be different. What are the challenges in trying to train younger dancers from a distance?
Well, the challenge is looking into all those little squares. But finally, what we did in the spring is I would teach a week of class, and then the following week they would still have class all together, but I would do little coaching sessions in the afternoon where I would meet them like 3 or 4 at a time. And then I would go over some of the concept that we were working in class, and then I would coach them more one-on-one so that they would get that kind of feedback, because what's happening is it's hard to give feedback on Zoom, but I think we're getting better at it also, because at first you don't know how you're talking by yourself when you're teaching, because they all have to mute. So there you are, the teacher, talking by yourself in front of a screen, and you don't know how much the student are absorbing or not. Eventually, they get used to learning on Zoom, so eventually you can spend more time watching what they're doing and giving feedback. But then there's a whole protocol. You can't give the feedback at the same time as they're dancing with the music, because then the music and the voice will interfere, and things like that. But we develop a way of working with the musician and the student that is still productive. But I would say that this time around, you can see that the teachers have learned how to give feedback on Zoom, which at first that was a whole new way of working.
Yeah, and I think what you've captured in your response, which may not be obvious, is how personalized it is to teach at this level.
Well, yes, for sure, because the thing is, you need to know what you have to work on, and you need to know if you're progressing, and you need to know, is that right? Because the teacher can talk and say, you have to do this and that. But as the dancer, when you're at that level, sometimes you'll question, is this the right thing or is this the right thing? And that's where they need the feedback. And that's why those more private sessions were important to be able to answer all those questions, that usually in a class, it's done in a more free-form way. Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as an adaptation. And I also want to talk about in this theme, the idea of changing protocols and changing expectations over time, over the year. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
That's what's been hard. Is at first you think it's going to be for a few months. And even when we started in September, we were thinking, we're on the end of this. But, just like the health specialist would say, until there's a vaccine, we're not done with wearing the mask and washing our hands and keeping the distance. And you realize that in your everyday life, that might not have a big impact. It has an impact, but when you're a choreographer and that one of the thing you like best is to put two bodies together, well, it's kind of, it's really hard to try to imagine creating differently, because as an artist, for example, for me, as an artist, what I like to speak about is the relationship between human beings. And it's hard to speak of that without touching. And that's, and I think I can do it. But I think at first we would think, oh, we'll wait till we can go back to that. But that might be still another year. We don't know.
When I graduated, maybe 2 months after, I just found a job because I was like, I need some money if I want to go maybe after the pandemic in LA or something. So I really wanted to focus on making money to be ready when the pandemic will be over, and then just go out there and do workshops and stuff. But then, I had a contract with a dance company in Montreal. So I was very lucky because right after I graduated, they message me and email me. So I was super lucky for that because the contracts in dance in the pandemic are not easy to find. If I say, it's super. It's tough. It's tough out there because you cannot practice in studios if the rules of the sanitary rules are not applied or something. So it's pretty hard. But I was super lucky. I found a job in dance, so a contract with them. We were lucky. We had the chance to work in person, but with mask on and with a distance. So when we arrived at the studio, we had to change completely. So we had clothes just for dance. So when you arrive, you just change completely. You have new clothes. You put a new mask on, and then we rehearse. And after we put back our old clothes, if I say, and then go back home. So we had the chance to work together, but not with physical contact. Mm-hmm. So that was super fun. We were working weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks a month. So now we had a lockdown. We had the lockdown in January, so we couldn't continue the project. But now because everything is gonna open up, we have the chance to start again the project and start right away next week. So we can go back in studios and work on this. So. Mm-hmm.
And can I say, this is Parts and Labor Dance that you're talking about having a contract with? Yeah. And that's also a group that that came and choreographed at the school, right? You were speaking earlier about how it's a small community, and the more you train and the more you work with different people, the more your opportunities grow. So this is a beautiful example of that, of working with these choreographers in school, and then having them, this team, Emily Gualtieri and David Albert-Toth, who make up Parts and Labor Dance, invite you into their process immediately. As soon as you become available as a professional dancer, scoop you up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was super exciting, and very stressful at the same time because I'm just new in the dance community, professional world. So but I was super lucky to have a contract right away after I graduated in terms in pandemic stuff and too. And
Wonderful. What would you say you want to take with you forward into, a post, hopefully soon post-pandemic world? What practices or teachings from this past year would you want to hold on to?
Well, the truth is I'm very curious to see what arises in this next 3 weeks in this virtual residency that we have with some pretty incredible teachers that will be with us, and artists and discussions, and it's about resilience. I'm not sure if resiliency is a word. Sorry. I think what I would say to that is that that our sense of purpose and intention is sincere in a way that, like, sincere in relationship to authentic for our own, that we hear again our own voices, maybe through quiet and through reflection and contemplation and just dropping down, finding the gap in that discursive, constant, ongoing chatter mind, that we have. I'm sure we all experience. And at this time with so much alone time and kind of contained energy can make the hamster wheel really fly around. To be able to just let that sift down and then inform, for me, more profoundly, what's vital, what do we need to say now, and it doesn't have to be serious. It could be full of joy. Maybe that's what we discover.
So December and end of 2020, beginning of 2021, there's a vaccine, there's talk of distribution. Does this change your plans, Odd's plans for the future?
No. I think that what we've got set in course right now, that will be what happens. It's just the timeline might change. And I think the uncertainty is still very much there. And, what's the Zen Buddhist, false solidity? I mean, if ever there was a time that we can hold on to false solidity, it's now. Like, everything's uncertain. Always. It's the one thing, right? So I think we've got this, a certain order, a certain commitment to a wonderful group of artists and to the community at large, like that's something too, that when people call us or email us and, we're trying the best that we can to see if we can accommodate or figure out or guide or send or, make something happen. So I think that course is kind of, it's there and now we just have to walk on it, and it might take a little spoke, but we'll just keep going.
I think, like I mentioned earlier, I'm trying not to attach myself too closely to any timelines in the sense that I'm not planning anything that would be completely impossible right now. I mean, obviously, I am looking forward to eventually returning to in-person work, but I'm not focusing on that right now, just because I don't want my plans to be completely derailed. So whatever I have planned is either specifically envisioned to be online or is envisioned in such a way that it could be done online, in person, or outdoors, distanced. So I've just sort of taken some of the equations that I would normally play with or consider out of the picture. Like, I'm not going to describe in an application a giant group piece with lots of intersecting group traveling. I'm just not going to include anything like that in my work. Because of sort of minimal resources as an emerging independent artist, I wasn't planning anything like that before anyways. I wasn't planning 20-person work, so it's not that hard to adapt. I would say I've been trying to invest in more, maybe reaching out to my community outreach, I guess you could call it, but more like making connections within my community and advocating for dance or for the arts in different ways. And that I will continue doing regardless of when the vaccines come or don't. I've recently joined the Arts Network Ottawa board, which has been great. A way to sort of have some representation for dance and Franco-Ontarian artists and, communicate our needs to the powers that be, and hopefully contribute to the infrastructure of the arts communities here. I also have very, very recently started being involved with Dance Ontario as a coordinator for the Ottawa network with Lola Ryan. So that's a neat thing that hopefully will blossom more when we can do in-person things and sort of once again advocate for Ottawa-Gatineau on a sort of broader level, but I can still do that work right now from my home.
My plans are still in my head. I still want to go out there and meet new people, new choreographer, and put my name on the map. But I think I just loved working in Montreal. Like I found the dance community very nice and very welcoming too. And I think I want to work in Montreal for a bit. So I think I don't want to leave right away when the pandemic will be over. So I think I'll just continue to work in Montreal a bit, and maybe when the COVID will be gone and everything will be fine, I think maybe then I will try to go maybe more in LA or maybe more in New York. But I think for now I'm in my head. It's just I'm working full time with Parts and Labor Dance, and because it's we have some the project is from now to maybe July or it's a long-term contract. So for now I'm just focusing on that, and I'm very happy that I found a project like that in the pandemic. Yeah.
Are there any practices or things that you've discovered throughout this past year that will stay as part of your practice or the way that you work your career moving forward? Like any silver linings from this pandemic that you could highlight?
Yeah, I think it's in the same way that you said. It's the opportunities that you have to take dance classes online with choreographers that are not available, like if there's not a pandemic. So I think, I took some classes like with Apollonia Velasquez and I took some classes with a big choreographer in LA. Also, you can work at home, so it's just practice your mental skills, like the self training is hard, so you have to focus
Discipline.
on like what you want to do and be motivated, and so that's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Once you're out of school and the training's in your own hands, like self-discipline is a big part of staying up to snuff as a performer, right?
Yeah,
Being
exactly.
ready to go. Yeah. So, the pandemic is a real crash course in self-discipline.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I think what's kind of funny is now I don't plan so much for the future. It's a little bit like, for example, the guest choreographers for this term. I have some of them that are really, really clearly happening and it's all set. But some of them, it's still, for example, on my list of guests, I have Sarah Coffin from Nova Scotia. So will she be able to come? Will we make that happen or wait? Is still something we're discussing. But now I guess I'm less nervous about the fact that things are not set in stone a year in advance. So I think what's changing is my way of dealing with it, my way of dealing with that maybe. And I think all the choreographers, because I'm talking to choreographers for next year and everything, and you can feel that people are not so in a hurry to get everything set in stone, because they know that it's very, very fluid still, So I think maybe it's our approach that is changing, because we know adaptation will be a key factor in everything.
Something else that's been in the ether as a conversation about the future is this idea of rebuilding and starting to implement changes in this new start that we want to see in the industry. Do you have visions for the future that you'd like to see?
Well, I think it's in the industry, just as in our life right now. For example, what we were saying about, we're asked to buy local, with our what we consume and things. But it's going to be the same with art. I think local art will probably become a little bit more important and relevant to the public. I think also decentralization versus centralization, because in a way right now, the biggest cities are the ones that are most impacted. So, for example, let's think a big thing, but you think of Broadway that's been black for almost a year now. Well, maybe some of those shows should be more everywhere in the world instead of just on Broadway. It's that thing where maybe we need to have more theaters and things happening in smaller cities too, not just in the big centers. Maybe artists need to be more dispersed and not just in the big centers. So I think there's going to be a lot of thinking and things changing in that way. And, you think, I can live anywhere if I work from home. So again, that might bring some
decentralization
of where the public is. So I think that's my key word, I think. The word I can't say is the key word.
Decentralization. I'll add it to my list of pandemic key phrases.
I think what I will remember of this, though, is the whole, although I think we've been separated a lot, I think, for example, I still feel very, very close with my students or with my dancers, although we've been apart, and sometimes even closer, because the emotions are very real and deep, and you have to talk about it. So I think that's something important to remember, is how deep the relationship can be, even if you don't see each other, on a physical level. And I feel like that with all of my students and dancers. So that's what I remember.
You've been listening to Dirty Feet. I'm Alison Elizabeth Burns. Music for Dirty Feet by Tristan Henry. Special thanks to Paula Flalo for ongoing support and guidance. And to past contributors for amassing an almost 200 episode archive available at dirtyfeetpodcast.com. Learn more about me at AlisonEB.com. This episode was created thanks to my patrons. If you would like to support the future creation of podcasts and hear an extended version of this episode, visit patreon.com/AlisonEB to learn more.